You're tuning into Black and White Sports on YouTube. The no-holds-barred truth on sports. The main event starts now.
All right, Black and White Sports supporters, let's talk about the Las Vegas Raiders. I think Raiders Nation, the players, the fans, extremely pleased after this past week, and they hired Antonio Pierce. I know some fans are not. Many fans believe they should have looked at Bill Belichick, Jim Harbaugh, Mike Vrabel. I get it. I hear you guys. I've seen you guys, and I understand. I do believe there's a certain amount of ownership malpractice that takes place if you don't look at all candidates and at least talk to all candidates. But Mark Davis was in a hell of a position because he passed on Rich Bisaccia, went to Josh McDaniels, who was, at the time, believe it or not, the number one coaching candidate on the market, which is still kind of shocking looking back after the Denver Broncos, and now, of course, hindsight's 2020, the disaster that was the Raiders' experience in Josh McDaniels. But nonetheless, Josh McDaniels was a coveted candidate at the time. That should give everybody caution about guys like Dan Quinn. I'm just saying. My God, I'm just saying. He's going to end up with another job. So anyway, that's neither here nor there. I think a lot of people believed, hey, Champ Kelly's the general manager. He's been setting in on prospective head coaching interviews, et cetera, except he's not yet. Not only is he not yet, but it seems like this is churning in a direction where Champ Kelly might not get this job, actually. And I'm really surprised by this. I'm pretty floored by this. But that's where we're headed, very possibly. There's another candidate that has emerged here, and we knew they were interviewing this guy. Look, a lot of teams are interviewing him. The Chargers interviewed him. In fact, we're going to go over who this guy is. But it's Ed Dodds from the Indianapolis Colts. And this is strange because it felt like, Champ Kelly and Antonio Pierce were actually making public appearances along with Richard Sherman, or Richard Seymour, Richard Sherman. Anyway, Richard Seymour, who has been setting in on the interview process for both head coach and general manager. There's a committee. Now, I'm going to tell you, one of my favorite guys to listen to is Michael Lombardi, and he's right about one thing. There's never been a single committee ever put into the Hall of Fame. Never a single committee. In other words, you got to have that one guy that's leading the charge and making these decisions. So let's get to this. This is The Athletic, and then we'll look at Ed Dodds, and then we'll look at Raiders offensive coordinator possibilities. All right, because some names have emerged. Raiders owner Mark Davis entered this latest coaching and general manager search with plans to have a GM in place first. I think many thought this was a foregone conclusion. Quote, I believe the GM has to have some say in who the coaching staff is going to be, Davis said December 13th in a sit-down interview with The Athletic. So what happened? The Raiders announced Friday that Antonio Pierce will ditch the interim tag and remain the team's full-time head coach. But as for interim general manager Champ Kelly, the presumed leading candidate who has interviewed twice and met a third time with Raiders brass, Friday, the wait continues. Look, there was a camp out there that thought Dave Ziegler shouldn't have actually gotten fired. That maybe his draft record might turn out to look pretty good. But it's neither here nor there. He had the stench of Josh McDaniels on him, right? Kelly still has a chance to get the job, but there's, quote, a split camp within the Raiders hiring committee. Okay, hiring committee. According to a team source with knowledge of the situation, it's unclear when that split occurred. But the Raiders' top two candidates are believed to be Kelly and Indianapolis Colts assistant general manager Ed Dodds, according to league sources, not authorized to speak publicly about the situation. Former Los Angeles Chargers GM Tom Telesco, a guy that's got a decent track record, and Cincinnati Bengals senior personnel executive Trey Brown are also in the mix. Trey Brown's also been talked about. I mean, if the Patriots can figure out what the hell they're going to do, the Patriots are a mess. He's been talked about quite a bit there, or had been, prior to Gerard Mayo. A couple of candidates reached out to the Raiders last week to withdraw their names when it seemed like Kelly was a slam dunk, but were told to hold off, according to league sources. That's huge. 2 candidates were going to withdraw their names. They were told not to. The decision was not, there was no decision made. I mean, that's exactly what that is. Hiring Pierce before working through that process is a drastic pivot, considering the Raiders' behavior up to that point. This is weird. This is weird. Last week, the Raiders hiring committee of Davis, President Sandra Douglas Morgan, Board of Directors member Larry Dennison, Senior Vice President and Director of Football Administration Tom Delaney, former Raiders Personnel Director Ken Herrock, and former Raiders defensive end Richard Seymour interviewed 6 GM candidates: Kelly, Dodds, Telesco, Brown, Buffalo Bills Director of Personnel Terrence Gray, and Denver Broncos Executive Director of Football Operations Kelly Klein Van Callaghan. Each had in-person interviews with the hiring committee. Brown, Gray, and Van Callaghan are all external diverse candidates, so it made Raiders compliant with the Rooney Rule. I keep forgetting. They've extended this Rooney Rule out in a bunch of directions. It's a fraud. It's a complete fraud. And freed them up to make a GM hire whenever they're ready. I don't care if it's a disaster. An owner should be able to hire whoever in the hell they want. I don't care. If they want to do one interview and like a dumbass make a hire, that should be their prerogative. It's their team. The Raiders brought Kelly in for a second conversation Monday before having him join the hiring committee for some of the head coaching interviews of Leslie Frazier, Chris Richard, and Pierce, according to a team source. Wow. This could turn into a wreck. Like him setting in could end up becoming a total farce or something. I don't know what's going on here. Frazier and Richard both spent this season out of the NFL, thus making them eligible for in-person interviews. The NFL's Rooney Rule requires in-person interviews with at least 2 external diverse candidates. Coaches still employed by NFL team cannot interview in person until after this weekend's divisional round playoff games. They can do in-person interviews if you're part of a staff this Monday. So this is nuts. On Tuesday, Kelly and the personnel staff held free agency meetings. According to a team source, after the meetings were finished, the personnel department were given the rest of the week off. The sense when they departed was that both Pierce and Kelly would soon officially be hired. Instead, the Raiders still appear to be undecided about what to do at GM. Kelly had his 3rd meeting with the hiring committee Friday after Pierce's hire became official, but he left the building without a deal. Wow. Wow, guys. This is nuts. This is nuts. Now, I want to be clear. If somebody has emerged in this that they believe is more qualified, that more qualified person should get the job. Now, this is where dysfunctional franchises, this is where this kind of thing happens. What if Antonio Pierce and Chip Kelly have this we work together, we work in lock and step thing going, and all of a sudden you bring somebody in, and ultimately the other general manager they bring in the back of their mind, they've got, and this is how this works, All these guys that are going to be general managers, eventually one day, that's their goal. In their mind, they keep a mental and in some cases a physical Rolodex of their head coaching candidates, who they would want to hire as head coaches if they ever got a general manager's job. That's where the drama can come into this situation. So they can bring in Ed Dodds, and right now, initially joining the Colts as the vice president of player personnel, Dodds quickly moved up to assistant general manager. So that's what he is. He's been working, Ed Dodds has, lock and step, hand in hand with Chris Ballard in their drafts. Got to remember, the Colts flipped their entire season in 1 year, right? 1 year. They just barely missed the playoffs, right? So that's something to think about. It came down to, I believe, the last game with the Texans. So that's going to be interesting. The Colts were able to add 2 All-Pros in the same draft. He's been a big part of the draft room during his time there since like the 2018 draft. It goes on to talk about the fact this guy's from Texas, but I don't know what that's got to do with anything. So anyway, what in the hell's going on with the Raiders all of a sudden? I mean, it looked like some stability was happening, and now it's not? I'm confused. Offensive coordinator possibilities. Vincent Bonsignor of Las Vegas Review, I believe, Review Journal. Zac Robinson, Klint Kubiak, that is Gary Kubiak's kid, that's right. Adam Stenavich, I'm not even sure who that dude is. Shane Waldron, Seahawks, Brian Fleury, 49ers. I can tell you, of the guys on this list, Robinson, Kubiak, Waldron, and we know Kliff Kingsbury is also on that list. So, and Kingsbury, I heard yesterday Kingsbury's hoping to get that job because even though he's really in play for that Bears thing because of of Caleb Williams and him, he was the USC quarterbacks coach. You see how that works out for the Bears. But Kingsbury would rather be on that side of the country where the Raiders are. He wants to be more on the West Coast. So, I don't know. That's going to get interesting. At least they're looking at guys that I think could be a very competent. I mean, Kubiak is the 49ers passing game coordinator, and their passing game's pretty good. It is. I mean, look, he's done wonders with a 7th-round pick named Brock Purdy. Pretty good, right? So I don't know exactly what all that entails because we know Kyle Shanahan calls the plays. Waldron is the guy that essentially, along with Dave Canales, flipped Geno Smith's career back in the right direction. So I like most of the guys on that list, to be honest with you. Tell me what you think, Champ Kelly, the Raiders. Can the Raiders avoid drama? It seems like they can't, no matter what. I mean, it's been one thing after another. And here we are. We thought that was set in stone. Package deal, not so fast, my friends. Peace, I'm out. Till next time.
Thanks for watching the show. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Be sure to tune in next time on Black and White Sports.